You think betrayal knocks once and leaves. Mine moved in, redecorated, and wore my perfume. My sister didn't just steal my inheritance, she used my ex-husband to do it. But there's one thing she never saw coming, something I kept hidden even from myself. It started with a house. Not a mansion or a villa or anything remotely poetic, just a long, low rectangle of brick and memory, with a porch swing that still creaked even when no one sat on it. My mother died in that house. So did my childhood, but only one of those earned an obituary. When Mom passed, the will left everything to me. For taking care of me all these years, she wrote in her shaky scrawl, the ink bleeding in places where her hand had trembled. My sister, Corinne, got a ceramic angel. Not because Mom disliked her, no, that would have been too simple. It was worse. Mom pitied her. Thought she was fragile. Corinne had always been the silk ribbon to my leather belt. Pretty. Decorative. Useless in a storm. I hadn't spoken to Corinne in almost 3 years. Not since she crashed my second wedding drunk and told everyone, that my husband, Daniel, used to sleep with her back in college. He denied it. She smirked. I pretended it didn't matter. We divorced 18 months later. Not because of her, or maybe entirely because of her. It's funny how many cracks you notice after someone throws the first stone. So when the lawyer read Mom's will and I saw Corinne's face fall, just slightly, the way a silk ribbon might slip from a gift, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I don't need the money, she said, lips tight, teeth whiter than memory. You earned it. I believed her. That was my mistake. 2 months later, I found out she'd been living in the house. Not visiting. Not sorting through Mom's things or watering the begonias. Living. She'd moved in, changed the locks, and transferred the utilities to her name. The neighbors thought it was hers. Even the mailman started calling her Mrs. Ames, which used to be my name before I traded it in for a lifetime of therapy and trust issues. At first, I tried the polite route. I called. Left voicemails. Sent an email with the subject line, house clarification, and body text that could have won a Nobel Prize in passive aggression. No reply. Then came the letter from the city. Zoning violation, it said. Unauthorized renovation. Attached, a photo of Corinne's new back deck, complete with hot tub and wine bar. I went to the house. Knocked. Daniel opened the door. Let me pause here and let that marinate. My ex-husband, shirtless, holding a coffee mug that said, #OneDad, which was hilarious since he never wanted kids in my mother's house, where my sister now apparently lived, rent-free and reality-free. I didn't even speak. I just stared. He stared back. Smiled like he was expecting a package. She's in the kitchen, he said, stepping aside. I walked past him, refusing to let my jaw hit the floor because God knows Corinne would have stepped over it in stilettos. She was sautéing mushrooms. In my mother's apron. The one with the embroidered violets and a pocket that always smelled faintly of Wrigley's spearmint gum. Hey sis, she said, like we were 10 and playing dolls again. You want lunch? You're trespassing. She blinked. Laughed. No, I'm not. Daniel helped me file a quitclaim deed. It's all legal. I felt my pulse lurch. You what? She turned off the stove as if sautéing and deception couldn't coexist. The house was never in your name. It was still under Mom's. You haven't probated the will, haven't filed anything. So Daniel helped me, speed things along. I turned to Daniel. You forged papers? He shrugged, not bothering to deny it. She's family. That's when I realized this wasn't about property. It wasn't even about Mom. It was about me. Always me. I left before I did something dramatic like cry. Or set the place on fire. But I didn't give up. Because while Corinne had the house and Daniel had his mug and his smug grin, I had something neither of them knew about. A second will. A handwritten addendum tucked in the back of an old cookbook, sealed in a plastic bag with a note. For when the girls fight. And in that will, Mom had changed her mind. But Corinne didn't know that yet. The addendum wasn't notarized. I should say that right away because it's the kind of detail that makes or breaks a thing. Like a whisper in court or a confession shouted into the wind. But it was in her handwriting, dated and specific, painfully, gloriously specific. To be opened only if Corinne contests the original will she'd written. Or if she starts acting like her father. Mom never let the dead rest easy, not even my father, who left when I was 12 and never looked back, unless he needed something. I took the cookbook, Cooking with Compassion, irony noted, and the addendum to my lawyer, an old friend of Mom's named George Simmons. He looked like a Thanksgiving turkey and smelled like pipe smoke and bankruptcy filings. When he read the note, he nodded. She always said Corinne had a flair for treachery, he muttered. Is this enough? He sighed, flipping the page like it might turn into gold on the next side. It's something. With the original will already on file, this strengthens your case. But we'll need to move quickly. If Corinne's claiming residence, she's probably filing for adverse possession or homestead rights. I didn't understand half those terms, but I nodded anyway. That's how the war began. I served her papers the next day. Not in person, undramatic, not suicidal, but through a process server who told me later she answered the door in a silk robe, holding a glass of Merlot. It was 10:15 a.m. Daniel's car was in the driveway. Of course. 3 days later, she posted a picture on Facebook, her and Daniel in front of the house, holding champagne flutes and a sign that said, "Our home, our rules." I hadn't seen them smile that wide since my wedding. The first one. Then came the messages. "Really, Liv," she texted. "Lawyers? You couldn't just talk to me like a normal person. You mean like when you talked to Daniel in college? Or again after our divorce?" No reply. The deposition was set for the following week. George told me to be calm. Reasonable. "We're building a case, not a vendetta," he said. But I wasn't interested in justice. I wanted ruin. Still, I played along. I wore navy and beige and used phrases like legally binding and intent to deceive. Corinne showed up in white. Always white. Like her innocence was dry clean only. She cried during the deposition. Said I'd always been Mom's favorite. Said she didn't mean to fall for Daniel, it just happened. Like gravity. Or arson. She needed a place to stay, Daniel added. I was just helping her through a hard time. By giving her a fake deed? George asked. Daniel shrugged. She thought it was real. Did she think your marriage to Olivia was real too? Or was that another charitable act? That shut him up. Briefly. Corinne stormed out after that. I didn't follow. I went back to the house. She hadn't changed much. Just painted the walls and replaced the photos. Where there had been pictures of Mom, now there were shots of Corinne and Daniel hiking, laughing, kissing on beaches I'd never seen. I stood in what used to be the dining room and imagined flipping the table, sending their smiles into orbit. But instead, I went to the attic. The air was stale with insulation dust and dead dreams. I pulled open the old cedar chest, the one with Marian Ames carved into the lid. Inside were letters, recipes, a wedding dress she never wore because she married my father in jeans. And a journal. I hadn't seen it before. Blue leather, gold edges. I opened it and saw her handwriting again, sharp, decisive. April 2nd, Corinne borrowed $5,000 from me. Told her it was a loan. She thinks it's a gift. Typical. May 18th, Olivia brought groceries. We laughed about the price of milk. Felt normal again. June 6th, Corinne asked about the will. Eyes too wide. Like her father's when he lied. July 21st, changed the addendum. Hid it in the cookbook. Only Olivia would think to look there. I closed the journal. This wasn't just evidence. This was insurance. Vindication. Love in ink and paper. The trial was set for September. George wanted to settle. Corinne wanted to negotiate. I'll move out, she offered. But I keep the money from the renovations. And the car. The car was Mom's, I said. She left it to you by accident, she replied. You don't even drive stick. I almost lunged across the mediation table, but George placed a firm hand on my arm. Let her speak, he said. So I listened. Corinne said she needed the house because she had nothing else. She'd lost her job, her apartment, and apparently, her dignity, sometime between Daniel's first kiss and the property filing. It wasn't personal, she whispered. It was survival. I didn't believe her. But I almost wanted to. I declined her offer. If you want to live here, I said, you'll have to rent it from me. At market value. With a lease and background check. She paled. And Daniel. I added. He's not on the deed. He's not even on the lease. He can stay as a guest. For up to 14 days. The silence in the room was thick enough to chew. You'd really do this to me? She asked, voice cracking. No, I said. You did this. I'm just signing the paperwork. The next day she called my bluff. And that's when the war became something else. Because she sued. For emotional distress and unlawful eviction. That's when I stopped hoping for justice. And started preparing for destruction. The thing about destruction is it doesn't come with a soundtrack. No warning violins, no thunderclap epiphanies. Just a sequence of small, stupid moments that stack up until your life quietly topples under their weight. Like the second email from my bank asking about a flagged transaction in Corinne's name. Or the voicemail from Daniel's mother, who never liked me, offering her sympathies for the family falling out. Sympathies. She said it like I'd lost a pet. Not a house, a mother, or the last shreds of my trust in blood. Corinne's lawsuit was in legal terms a hot mess. She claimed I weaponized grief and used my advantageous position as favored daughter to manipulate estate proceedings. Her lawyer, a friend of Daniel's, was the kind of man who looked like he practiced law from a tanning bed. She's trying to exhaust you, George told me. Emotionally. Financially. She's succeeding. He leaned forward. We still have leverage. The journal. The addendum. Witnesses. Witnesses. That's where it got interesting. See, Corinne wasn't discreet. She never had been. And Daniel? He thought charm was a shield against consequences. Together they were sloppy, reckless, invincible in their minds, forgetful in real life. I started collecting. Quietly. The neighbor who'd seen Daniel bring a notary friend to the house the week after Mom died. And leave laughing, wine bottle in hand. The grocery delivery guy who noticed Corinne using Mom's old debit card. Weeks after the account should have been frozen. A former co-worker of Corinne's who swore she once bragged about winning the inheritance war. Before I'd even buried the urn. Then came the final piece. Her phone. No, I didn't steal it. I'm many things, but I'm not her. She dropped it during a mediation session. Left it on the table like a forgotten accessory. And when the room cleared for lunch, I looked. I shouldn't have. I know that. But I did. Photos. Screenshots. A text thread between her and Daniel titled Plan Kiss Mark. Because of course it was. Corinne. She'll never file. She's too busy being the responsible one. Daniel. Perfect. Let me know when the papers are in. I'll handle the utility transfer. Corinne. Don't forget to fake the plumber invoice. We need that for proof of residence. My stomach turned. There was more. A draft email to a realtor. Listings for properties in the Bahamas. A Pinterest board labeled New Life Vibes. They were planning to sell the house. To cash in, disappear, and leave me with a ghost's memory and a legal hangover. I sent everything to George. He barely contained his glee. We file this under fraud, conspiracy, and malicious intent. She'll fold. Or we'll bury her in affidavits. But Corinne didn't fold. She doubled down. She showed up in court with a new hair color, ice blonde, and a new ring. Diamond. Left hand. She married him, I whispered. George blinked. That complicates things. No. Clarified them. This wasn't about love. It never was. It was about erasure. She wasn't just stealing my inheritance. She was stealing my life. The judge, a woman in her 50s with a haircut that said, "No time for nonsense," listened patiently as Corinne wept and Daniel testified about my obsession and emotional volatility. She was always the strong one, Corinne said, dabbing her eyes. But strength without compassion is cruelty. I wanted to laugh. I really did. Instead, I stood and gave my side. No theatrics. No tears. Just facts. The will. The journal. The screenshots. The witnesses. Corinne's face turned a shade of pink usually reserved for raw meat. She's lying, she said. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Daniel, who wouldn't meet her eyes. 2 days later, he reached out. A text. Can we talk? I ignored it. Then a voicemail. I didn't know about the second will. I thought she said, "Look, I messed up. But maybe we can fix this." I called him back. Invited him to meet. Neutral location. Coffee shop. Public. Witnesses. He showed up looking tired, thinner. Still handsome in that catalog model way, but the gloss was gone. She used me, he said, stirring his latte. Said it was just to get the deed. Then it turned into this. A wedding. He flinched. She said it was for optics. For the case. And you went along with it. Because. He looked down. Because I thought she loved me. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It startled the barista. She doesn't love anyone, Daniel. She just hates losing. He slid a folder across the table. These are the originals. Of everything. The deed. The forged documents. Her notes. I kept them. Just in case. Why give them to me? Because I want out. I want to undo this. I took the folder. You can't undo a fire, Daniel. You can only watch what's left burn slower. He left. I gave the folder to George. He filed a motion. Corinne's lawyer withdrew 2 days later. The judge set a final hearing. That's when she came to see me. At the house. She looked small. Not in stature but in presence. Like a star that had finally collapsed under its own gravity. You won, she said, standing on the porch. No, I said. I survived. That's different. She didn't ask for forgiveness. Just stood there, waiting for something, a flicker of sympathy, maybe a hug. I gave her silence. Eventually she turned and left. But as she walked away, she looked back. That's when I knew. It wasn't over. Not yet. There's a moment, just a breath really, between knowing a storm is coming and actually hearing the thunder. It's the sharp, metallic taste of air before the sky breaks. That was me 2 weeks before the final hearing. Waiting. Watching the horizon. Knowing Corinne would do something because she always did. I didn't have to wait long. The night it happened, I was asleep, the first real sleep I'd had in weeks. The kind where your body forgets it's at war. When I woke, it was to the sound of glass shattering downstairs. I grabbed my phone and a heavy flashlight. Not a weapon, but it had weight. I crept down, heart pounding in my throat, each step a drumbeat of memory and dread. She was in the living room. Not breaking in, already inside. Calm. Sitting on the couch with a glass of wine like she owned the place. Which, legally, she didn't. Not anymore. You changed the locks, she said, swirling the wine. That was rude. You broke the window. She shrugged. You forced my hand. I didn't speak. Just started dialing. No police, she said, eyes flashing. Not unless you want this whole thing to spiral. Already spiraled, Corinne. We passed the drain months ago. She stood, suddenly too close, the wine glass still in hand. You think you've won, don't you? Got your justice. Your revenge. This was never about revenge. She laughed, dry and bitter. Of course it was. You just like to dress it in noble intentions. But I know you live. Always the good daughter. Always the martyr. You didn't want the house. You wanted the story. I stared at her, flashlight clenched so tight my fingers ached. Leave. I'm warning you. No, Corinne. I'm warning you. You can lie to the court, to Daniel, to yourself. But this house doesn't belong to you. Not anymore. And you know what really terrifies you? She tilted her head. You're irrelevant now. You don't matter. Not to me, not to Mom's memory. Not even to Daniel. That landed. She threw the wine glass, not at me, but at the fireplace where it exploded like a crimson firework. Then she left. No threats. No promises. Just a door slamming shut and the sound of retreating heels on the walkway. I called George. Told him everything. She broke in. She didn't even try to hide it. Good, he said. That's the last nail. The final hearing was a formality. Corinne didn't show. Her lawyer sent a one-sentence withdrawal. Client no longer wishes to pursue litigation. The judge reviewed the documents, my evidence, the amended will, and the journal. Her ruling was swift and absolute. All rights, titles, and responsibilities related to the estate of Marion Ames are awarded to Olivia Ames. The court finds the actions of Corinne Ames to be deceitful, coordinated, and motivated by personal gain, and declines any petition for financial restitution. Translation, it's yours. All of it. And she gets nothing. I walked out of the courthouse into sunlight that felt different. Not warmer, just cleaner. Like I'd finally rinsed something toxic off my skin. But freedom doesn't feel like a parade. It feels like quiet. Like waking up and realizing the noise is gone. Daniel left Corinne a week later. Sent me a note, handwritten, almost apologetic. You were always the one who tried to save people. I should have known you'd be the one to save yourself. I didn't reply. I had the house. I sold it. Not because I needed the money, though it helped, but because the place smelled too much like grief and gasoline. I kept one thing, Mom's apron. The one Corinne wore when she told me she'd taken what was mine. I washed it 5 times. Still smells faintly of spearmint. I bought a little condo by the coast. Nothing dramatic. Just windows and light and silence. No creaking porch swing. No ghosts. A few weeks later, I got a letter. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Corinne. Inside, one photo. Us as kids. Halloween, dressed as matching witches. Smiling. On the back, I didn't mean to become her. I just didn't want to be nothing. That was the last I ever heard from her. I don't know where she went. Daniel said something about Arizona, then stopped talking about her altogether. I think he wanted me to thank him for handing over the evidence. But heroes don't ask for redemption at the checkout line. Not in my world. Sometimes I dream about her. Not the adult version, not the silk and manipulation and wine-soaked lies, but the little girl who used to braid my hair and beg me not to leave her alone at night. In those dreams, she never lets go of my hand. And I always wake up first. Grief has a long shelf life. Longer than love. Longer than anger. It doesn't rot. It ferments, sharper with time, deceptively still until you uncork it. I discovered that the first autumn in my new home, surrounded by people who smiled but didn't ask questions, where the beach sand covered everything in a film of neutrality. No one knew who I was. Or who I had been. It should have been a relief. It wasn't. In the mornings I walked. Miles at a time. Down the boardwalk, past tourists and retirees, until my legs burned and my thoughts blurred into something less like thinking and more like survival. The sea was constant, always speaking, never listening. That's when the letter arrived. Again, no return address. Inside, a single page. Typed. Formal. From a bank I didn't recognize, an estate I hadn't thought about since my last road trip with Daniel. It began plainly enough. Dear Miss Ames, we are contacting you regarding a deposit made in your name, originating from the joint account of Corinne Ames and Daniel Lockwood. I sat down. Froze. The amount was large. Not millions, but enough to make someone wonder what they were trying to erase. Attached, a note. Short. No signature. For everything I took. For what I didn't know how to say. I stared at it until the edges blurred. Daniel's name was on the wire. Not hers. But the phrasing, that was Corinne. Always cryptic when she didn't want to say sorry. Always trying to buy her way out of confession. I didn't touch the money. Not for weeks. My lawyer, a new one now, younger, hungrier, said it was clean. No legal strings. A gift, filed and documented. Do you want to return it? I didn't know. Because what do you do with restitution when the damage is already baked into your bones? One night, I made a list. Old habit. Mom taught me to make lists when I was 8, whenever the world felt like it might spin off its axis. What I lost. My mother. My home. My sister. My trust. A version of myself I'll never get back. What I gained. The truth. Closure, questionable. Freedom. A very expensive apology. What I still want. Silence. Peace. A memory of Corinne that doesn't feel like betrayal dressed in perfume. The money sat in my account like a confession waiting for a priest. I used it, eventually not on myself, but to start a scholarship in my mother's name. For girls like Corinne used to be bright, aimless, too pretty for their own safety. I named it the Marion Ames Grant for Reckless Potential. Felt fitting. I never heard from Corinne again. Not on my birthday. Not at Christmas. Not when Daniel finally remarried someone younger, less complicated, with no shared history to rot between them. I saw the photos online. They looked happy. He looked lighter. I felt nothing. And then one spring afternoon, a woman knocked on my door. Early 30s, maybe. Nervous. Holding a small manila envelope. Are you Olivia Ames? I nodded. She handed me the envelope, her hand trembling just slightly. She asked me to bring this. Said you'd understand. But the woman was already backing away. Inside the envelope, a key. No note. No explanation. Just a brass key with a faded tag that read Unit 304, Desert Creek Storage. I flew to Arizona 3 days later. I don't know what I expected, maybe old clothes, a box of photos, dusty bitterness trapped in cardboard. What I found was a single trunk. Inside, a stack of journals. Not mine. Hers. 27 of them, lined neatly, labeled by year. Her handwriting was the same as when we were kids, large, open, always too confident. I read them all. It took weeks. And in those pages I found her. Not the woman who stole my inheritance. Not the liar in white. But the scared girl who always wanted more than she thought she deserved. Who fell in love too easily and apologized too late. Who envied me not because I had more, but because I made survival look like strength. There were entries about Daniel. About Mom. About me. About the guilt. The shame. The addiction, not to substances, but to drama. To being needed. To being the story. In the final journal, there was a page folded in half. Olivia. If you're reading this, it means you didn't burn everything. Thank you for that. I don't expect forgiveness. I wouldn't know what to do with it. But I hope someday you remember me laughing. Not scheming. Not lying. Just laughing. With you. Love always stupidly, eh? Corinne. I cried. Finally. Not because she died, though in many ways she had. But because grief at last had permission to be more than rage. I donated the journals. Anonymous. To a women's shelter nearby. Someone said they might use them in therapy. I hope they do. Now I sleep. Not always soundly. But without the door locked 3 times. Sometimes I walk by the ocean and imagine telling Mom everything. I think she'd be proud. Maybe disappointed. Definitely amused. And sometimes just before sleep takes me, I hear a voice in the dark, young, unsure, familiar. Don't leave me alone, Liv. I squeeze the memory's hand. Just once. And then I let go. Thanks for sticking around and listening to my story. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss more true life stories just like this one.